On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very special treat. She's a badass serial entrepreneur and business mogul. She disrupted an entire industry and created a sexual revolution when she founded the female version of Viagra. She shattered the pink ceiling and built and sold two massive companies for more than 1.5 billion with a B. With over 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry, she's a powerhouse and pioneer in women's health, and she's helping others do the same through her company, the Pinkubator. She's a resilient force of nature, and as far as I'm concerned, she put the color pink on the map. She's just an overall juggernaut in all facets of life and a phenomenal human being. Please welcome the tenacious, brilliant, and ambitious Cindy Eckert. How you doing, Cindy?
Craig, can you do that every time before I walk into a room, if you would not mind?
Sold. I did good by you.
My family would be like, what? No.
What's
that?
It never gets old. I love seeing the guest reactions. And like I always like to say, Cindy, you wrote it. I just said it.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, it's always a work in progress. So I appreciate it so much.
Yeah. And you know, the best part about it is it's just the beginning of your resume, right? Imagine where you'll be a couple of years from now. We'll get you back on for a sequel.
I love it. Let's do it.
So as I would, and me and you could have chatted for a whole hour before we went on air, but obviously we want to save the juicy stuff for the show and so forth. And the audience loves to hear a little background story, and we'll hit that. But before we dive in, we're going to get a little weird. You ready for me?
Yes, I'd love it.
Cindy, what's your superpower?
Seeing potential in others that they don't see in themselves.
Isn't that the best?
The best.
Yeah.
My team is like the band of misfits. And I think that every time I hired one, it's a bit of the land of the misfit toys. When I hired them, I saw this thing in them that I think many of them didn't even see in themselves yet. And to watch them realize that has been part of the coolest, the coolest part of building companies is the teams.
I love that because I'm assembling a team myself with CLS brand, and a lot of the girls that that have been emailing you, so they always just like, why did you choose me? And it's like an ongoing joke. Like I never tell them, but just like you, like I see potential and I believe in them significantly more than they believe in themselves. And I always say to myself, like, if they only believed in themselves 10% of the way I believe in them, or you believe in your team, forget about it, right?
I totally agree. That's awesome. I love that. Actually, I think that goes outside of team too for entrepreneurship, is just really seeing possibility where other people see limitation. We're going to talk about that in my story.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about. That's perspective. You're basically unplugged from the matrix. You see things a different way. And I definitely want to acknowledge you for that, for sure. What's something weird about you that a lot of people might not know?
Oh, I think people think, you've got the $1 billion exit. They think you're fancy. I'm not so fancy.
No?
I don't know if people know. I have to tell you, I had a birthday not that long ago, and I did just on social, I said, can you guess where I make Justin take me for my birthday every year? And people came in with, these swanky places and everything else. I was like, no, Maggiano's. So my weird thing is I have a real love of chain restaurants. Like I will fight somebody over a roll at Texas Roadhouse.
That's awesome. Why? It's just your thing?
I guess. I think it's just like simplicity is so nice, right? Consistency in those restaurants is so fun. And I think there's a lot about, honestly, from when I had my very first company, I had this tiny little sign by my back door. Is a photo that my dad had taken on a trip to Montana. And it said, cowboys scrape shit from boots before entering. And I hung it by my door. And over the years, I crossed out boys and I wrote girls in pink. But there's something about, scraping the shit from your boots, keeping it real, staying grounded. And that's, I hope you always stay authentically who you are, regardless of the success, right? Success doesn't look like money. I think success for people, though they get to define it on their own terms, but I define it as impact.
This is gripping. The only negative I got going on is we don't have 10 hours for this. And as I learned on Wall Street after 10 years, making money does not equal success, in my personal opinion.
Same.
My personal opinion is that success is measured by how happy you are.
Yeah.
And I love to ask, we've had some of the biggest guests on the planet in terms of success and stuff like that. And I always ask them this question, and I'm just so curious, and I can't wait to hear your answer. How would you, and I understand that different seasons in your life, you may have different answers, but today, right now, what is your definition of success?
Ooh, I think that's it. I think success, when I dream of success, it doesn't look like money, it looks like impact. That's really what it looks like. And I would say over the course of my life, how would I define success? Courage. The courage to take the shot, to do the thing, to define it on your own terms. Just what you said, Craig, which was, I define success as happiness. There's courage in making that choice of what success looks like for you and the contentment that comes from that.
Yeah, this is awesome. And I know with your Pinkubator, when you're choosing people that you would like to work with or get behind, you're looking for people that want to take a big shot at life. Is that right?
Oh, I'm crazy. I take the crazy bets because I've always taken the crazy bets and the swings at big things myself. So I'm looking for people who are doing really disruptive things, the kind of things that if they walk into most rooms, people are like, nah, never going to happen. No shot. And it's that level of, courage and figuring out why they're so motivated to do that. Those are my people.
I love this straight up. And I agree with you 100%. When you first started getting going in entrepreneurship, before you had a resume and maybe money and so forth, were you scared to take that big shot, or was it?
Sure.
You were? Because for me, like when I started CLS and I pivoted from Wall Street, everyone always asked, like, weren't you scared?
Yeah.
I just got to a point where like I was more scared of not taking the shot.
That's fair.
Yeah, and going back and waking up every day and going to what felt like a job, which I don't even think I was alive. I was just existing. That's another story for the time. But like sometimes that big scary feeling, it's kind of like the night before a marathon, even though I've ran several, like I still get there because I respect the task at hand.
Sure.
But it's kind of like a good scary, right?
I think, listen, the scared to bet on myself, no. Like knowing that, like I'd had a kind of conventional career like you. So I'd been in big companies and I was very certain that I was tired of cleaning up other people's messes and not participating in any of the value creation at my like hard work. So in that regard, wasn't scared to bet on myself, definitely scared at all the moments of how am I going to get money? I don't have a rich uncle. Who am I going to get this from? How am I going to scale? What? How do you build a manufacturing facility? Like the scared of the unknowns, like, oh, well, I've never done this before. But I think the end, and I talk a lot about this, particularly to female entrepreneurs, because we talk so much about confidence, right? It's almost this swagger, this fearlessness, whatever that is. Man, I wasn't confident in those moments, but you know what I was? I was competent.
Ooh.
And I believed in my competence. And when I walked into the room, even if my palms were sweating, I was like, you know what? I know this cold. Let's go. Ask me a question. Ask me another. And that was really how I built, if you will, that feeling that ask me anything. I'm good. I've got it. But it's never been about swagger and false arrogance. Because for sure there were moments I was terrified.
I would drop the mic, but the conversation just started and I want to continue. But ultimately, and something like I always say is preparation breeds confidence, right? Like I tie prep to confidence. People always ask me like, how are you always so confident when you show up, this, that, because I do the homework. Like I did the homework for this conversation. Number one, because I'm a fan, but number two, I want to give the conversation the respect it deserves so that it's that much better. And we build an unbelievable rapport and so forth. So it's just like you can tie confidence. People think you have to be born with it. It's not the case. It's a skill you develop. And also you could associate different things to confidence, like competence.
Exactly. I love replacing that notion. And then I think anybody can go out and conquer the room.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between the two, right? Like, for example, if you were going to jump out of a plane with a parachute on, you don't want to necessarily be so confident as you do competent when to pull the lever or how to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this is awesome. And to be honest with you, like, of course, I want the audience to get a background story and so forth. But I think what's most valuable to them is us just chopping it up like this. And I got to say, I heard you speak about something like this recently, and I had to bring it up in regards to the people that work with you. I like to say
Yeah,
with you as opposed to for you.
for
You
sure.
like you, it's very important for you, for them to have the mentality and also in reality to have skin in the game.
Totally.
It creates an entirely different performer. Is that accurate?
100% for everybody listening. If you're building a company, I will let you in on the number one success factor. Give other people pieces of it. The people who are going to wake up earlier to go out there and crush it with you. The people are going to stay later. Reward them with that ownership, and they will make decisions differently. So from my very first company, why did I do it? I did it because I wanted to own it. Right? I wanted to own my complete destiny, the value I created. So why would I have anybody else join me and not give them a piece of it? And really the way that they spent money, their passion. And when we sit down together to this day, right, 3 companies later, and I look to my left and my right, I can say, hey, we own a company together. What are we going to do here? And they're bought into the decision-making, just like they're sitting in my seat. It creates just an unbelievable, I think, focus of the organization and cohesiveness of the team.
100%. And it's like, look, obviously you want to surround yourself with people that have the same vision as you. So they treat it like their baby, like you would, and so forth. But like, just even imagine like someone on a sales call, just as an example, like if they don't have skin in the game and the other person on the line says, no, all right, have a great day. But if they have skin in the game, maybe they go into the other rebuttal to help the person see the value, and then they get the job done and so forth. So I love that.
Early days, really early days, my first company called Slate, I had, a sales force, and we had an out of stock, and it was, awful. Like it was a complete miscalculation on my part. And we had to go around to doctors and say like, hey, you have to reschedule appointments because of this out of stock. Can you imagine me, the salesperson, delivering that like a fancy surgeon who's going, excuse me, like you're screwing up my life. And I knew I'd hired exactly the right people when they didn't walk in and say like, hey, that lady in pink, like she goofed up. We have a complete out of stock. They went in and said, hey, listen, we're small, we're learning, stick with us. We're going to get it right. They owned it. They owned it for me. They actually were owning my mistake in those offices and building long-term loyalty among customers. Only owners behave that way.
100%. Yep. And for the audience listening, like run that back, grab a journal. This is priceless nuggets. And in case you were, and we're going to get into it a little bit, but there's nobody more credible than Cindy in regards to building companies and leadership and having success in that. So I want to acknowledge you for that as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to repeat back something to you that you said, and I want you to explain it. Treat your career like a jungle gym, not a ladder.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. So think about it. When you go out, and I work with so many students, I love working with kids in school who are like deciding what they're going to do. And you think about if they go in, at least in my way, to a conventional path, you think about, well, I got to do 2 years of this, and then I get this incremental growth to this. And then I'm walking up this ladder, just like this, right? Slowly but surely in my career. Why the hell are you not swinging like you're on a jungle gym toward things that excite you? My trajectory changed when I left my very first job, where I was a dutiful soldier and I was paying my dues. And I thought, you know what? I'm not really being stretched. I'm not being pushed to do things that are outside of my comfort zone. I'm not getting these opportunities to learn. And I realized I need to go there. Oh, was it lateral? Didn't matter. Then I need to go there. I want to learn from this person. Then I want to get this skill set. And I just started swinging toward opportunities where I would get additional responsibilities. Again, it might not have been a promotion. It might not have been that I was a manager before and not now. It was just about learning. And I think that's the critical piece in your career, is don't think of it in such a linear fashion. You're accumulating all these skills that are giving you this unbelievable value to what you want, including creating something for yourself if you want to.
And that's priceless.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, I hope we have choices you have to make if you work for me. We foundationally, from the very beginning, I said there's 6 choices you have to make to come work for me. And one of them is the choice to be learning every day. And that's that same spirit, right? Treating your life, I think, like a jungle gym.
Curiosity.
Right? It's that curiosity that has to run so deep. The most successful people I know are wired with insatiable curiosity. And I love sharing this story. Same thing, early days, first company, we had this in-office procedure. So we had to teach doctors how to do it. Brand new technology. We went around the country and taught folks. Well, these are surgeons, and surgeons, they're known to maybe have an ego every once in a while. So we were teaching, and we would film techniques, and we filmed techniques of surgeons all over the world. And then we started showing them at medical conferences. And I can remember standing in the room the very first time we put up like a series of videos, and I watched the audience, and 99% of the audience was sitting there with their arms crossed. And their body language said, they were like, no, that's not how you do it. They were watching other surgeons' techniques, and they were comparing it to their own, like, no. 1% of the room was leaning in. And they were the 1% who asked questions like, what did you do there? Why did you do that? Oh my God, I never thought of that. I'm going to try that in the next case. I bet you can guess which group were the top in the world. The 1% who were asking questions, who were leaning in, who wanted to know more, were the very top surgeons in the world. And they were the only ones who were still learning.
Yeah. It just reminds me of like back in the day, like when I was first learning all this personal development stuff and I was working with a mentor, like he used to have to throw me out. He's like, Craig, I got to go home. I got to see my wife. Please, just one more question. I was so curious and I wanted to learn everything.
Yeah. Were you like that from when you were a kid?
No. And I'll tell you why. Great question. Because I didn't, well, I was referring to school. I wasn't interested in the stuff they taught me in school.
Yeah.
I didn't really become like so interested in that stuff until I realized like the personal development stuff. But as a kid, yeah, I guess I was pretty curious. I always wanted to know, how things operated and so forth. But the personal development stuff, just the fact that you can work on yourself and like where you are now is not an it's not a life sentence. Like you can change your perspective and stuff. That stuff really got the creative juices going, honestly.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. Let's give the audience a little bit of context in case they're not familiar with the story. So I'm curious, there's that word again. What made you want to get involved with a drug like the female Viagra, so forth? And tell us a little bit about that process all the way up to the point where you eventually do sell it. And obviously you weren't satisfied because, they didn't take advantage of the asset and then you went back.
Oh my gosh, what a crazy story. So my very first company, the first time I stepped out on my own, I had one of the male sexual health drugs. So by the way, there were 26 of them on the market. 26. Guess how many there were for women? 0. That math did not make sense, especially in the face. Well, first of all, more women than men actually suffer from issues in the bedroom. More women. Right. And there were 0 solutions, which to me spoke volumes to probably how we feel about female sexuality, meaning that we don't talk about it. We're a little bit, we don't have that same pleasure principle as if you will, for women as we do for men.
Yeah.
It completely defied the science. So we knew scientifically that for millions of women, there was a biological basis to their lack of interest in sex. So women who are frustrated by low libido, that's millions of women and the most common issue for women.
I didn't know that.
So I'm running this. You didn't know it?
No, this is really educational for the audience. This is great.
So listen, I will say to the whole audience, I want everybody to think about this for just a second. For the last 20 plus years, you have not watched a single Super Bowl in which you weren't fed a message that, hey, sexual satisfaction is really good for your quality of life, right? You may like sit in bathtubs, hold hands, you may run through daisy fields, but it's part of your quality of life. And I think nobody would deny that, right? Sex is part of our swagger, how we feel about ourselves. What you weren't conscious of, I would bet, is that the subtext was, if you're a man. All of that messaging was for solutions for guys. well, what the hell about the women? Who was thinking about women? Women too want a satisfying sex life. Sometimes things go wrong biologically. They're out of their control. Why, when we have medical advances that can address it, did we not have development and get these solutions to market? That was my wake-up call, right? I'm sitting there running a successful company, this business for men, and I'm thinking, holy cow, I'm going to fix it for women. And of course, my board looked at me and said, hi, we're doing really well. Like we're profitable. This is great. Please don't go and sell the company off to take this on. And I was like, this is my calling. It's what I'm doing. And little did I know.
You felt guided?
It would be. What's that?
Like on a deep spiritual level, like you felt guided?
I felt 100% like, as a woman, I wanted this option in the world.
Yep.
I wanted it. And I felt the pain of so many women who were suffering with this quietly, didn't want to talk about it, maybe whispered to their girlfriends, like, hey, this is going on for me. What do you think? I knew what all the prevalence data was. It affected so many women and we weren't addressing it. And that was really, again, the wake-up call. I think many times in my life, I've run toward the things that everyone else is running away from. That's just been something about me. Nobody will address it. I'm going to address it.
You're a trendsetter and a pioneer. I'm not surprised to hear that, but it's one of the many reasons why you're awesome.
I think it's like fighting that in the injustice of that. It made no sense to me. And it certainly made no sense to me, I should say to everybody, because there was this spectacular scientific discovery that for many, many women, something goes off kilter in the brain. It's a brain chemistry issue. And then they don't think about sex anymore. It's not that they don't love their partners. They love their partners. They just literally never think about sex, which is why they're not really particularly receptive to it. They never think about it. They're not initiating it. And it's causing a breakdown, not only in how they feel about themselves, but actually in the relationship. So I go on this path. I sell off my profitable business in men. I start this company on the journey to get the first ever product, for women's sexual dysfunction through the FDA. Holy cow, I did not know what kind of journey that would be. I mean, front page news, death threats, a really actually incredible journey on something that's just science, right? It's just clinical trials.
See, why death threat? Why are people so mad?
Oh, I think people have a really visceral reaction that maybe we're not even conscious of. When we walk into the bedroom, each one of us, we probably bring a few things with us. We bring how we were raised, maybe religion, psychology in terms of how do we feel about ourselves? How are things going in the relationship? But we all bring biology into the bedroom, men and women alike. And when you just think about it that way, you realize how absurd it is that we were somehow had a point of view that women shouldn't have these treatment options. That was crazy, right? And I'll tell you, my parents who had to live through this with me. One time I came home from a trip and my dad had installed cameras everywhere around my house. It's ridiculous, right? And it's because he was so worried because people got so crazy about this. And I remember him saying to me, could you have not just invented something for diabetes? And what he was saying in truth is, you know what? If you're not diabetic, you probably have no point of view on medication for diabetics, but every single human being has a point of view on sex. So anyway, crazy time. And I think honestly, Craig, if you fast forwarded to me doing this today, there probably wouldn't have been quite the same reaction. Again, it's about pioneering. It's about pushing through those things. I'm very proud of this fact. When we broke through, and the end of the story is a success. We won. Science won. Women won. It was a long, hard road. 6 years for us to get there. By contrast, it took Viagra 6 months. But when we broke through, and we had 3 times as many patients worth of data, but who's counting? So when we broke through, there was no such term as this term femtech. So femtech is a really sexy term today in investing. It's one of the hottest categories for venture capital. And it's all of these solutions, right? Technologies, be it products, et cetera, that put power in the hands of women. right? So it could be everything from fertility products to maternal care, et cetera. That term did not exist before we broke through, right? It's going to be a $50 billion category by 2025. It was coined after we broke through with Addie. That's awesome. Like, that's the kind of change that I love. So I finally win. It was a very crazy, crazy ride.
Cindy, you put a dent in the universe. Like you talked about it. No, not hope. You did. You talked about impact earlier in the conversation. Like, that's how you measure success. Like, yeah. You're a world shaker. You shook things up and you changed the narrative. I think about how powerful that is.
We pushed. we really pushed hard. I mean, I fought the government for women's sexual pleasure and ultimately won. And I won because the science was there, and science actually had told us the answer. It's just that society had to catch up to pay attention to it. When I did sell it, you said no.
Real quick, before you did that, the FDA did not approve it a couple tries, right?
Oh yeah, they turned me down. They rejected me. And that was, can you imagine? Here I am. I'm running a really pretty small company. Like, we were a small group. We were 20 of us. We were 23 people on the day that we sold the company for $1 billion. 23 people created that. And we had listen, I had a huge bench of people, surround sound outside of the organization, but we were lean. And when the FDA turned me down, that's it. I mean, they control our fate completely. So when they rejected, I was over until I decided I wasn't. And it was really thanks to a woman who had been in the clinical trials for Addie, who was watching this tiny little company. No, we weren't getting any noise at this point. This tiny little company. And she saw this rejection, and she reached out to me. And I've told this story a million times, but it was so instrumental because she reminded me why I was doing it in the first place. For her, for the validation that what she was dealing with was real, that she deserved solutions just like guys did. And that when she had it, it had, in her case, made a big difference in her life. It's not a panacea. It's not perfection for everybody. It works for some women, doesn't work for others. But you know what? That's all products. So why were we standing in the way of this one? And when she met with me and I got to see just the pain of what this had done to her life, what this had done to her beautiful marriage. She adored her husband. She had 2 beautiful boys. She ran her own company, by the way, as well. Total type A. This was falling apart. And I think when she reminded me of that, I decided I was going to fight the FDA. And I can remember my team saying, wait, can you do that? And I said, we're about to find out. And my head of IT put a pair of pink boxing gloves on my desk, and they still sit there today. Because sometimes it's a great reminder for me on a daily basis, you got to fight for what's right and what you truly believe in. And I knew science was on my side, and everybody just needed a minute to catch up. And all that needed to happen for them to catch up was to listen to women who were living with this, which is who should have been doing all the talking in the first place. So I get the big win.
It's just got me really emotional. I don't get emotional too often, but the way you are just articulate that story, and like, you essentially provided billions of women with an option.
An option. Take it, don't take it. But by God, I want for women to have the option to have a satisfying sex life. If they don't today, sex is, look, none of us would be here if it wasn't for sex.
Correct.
So sex is fundamental to most of our life experiences. And I think that we shouldn't overlook it. I mean, it's so easy to just joke about sex. It's easy at the cocktail party, but you know what? There's real pain when things aren't going right in that department, in relationships and for people. For so sure. When we got our big victory, 2 days later, I announced I was selling the company for $1 billion. And it was a $2.5 billion deal, $1 billion in cash up front. And boy, that was pretty
Let me just reinforce that for the audience. $1 billion with a B in cash.
That was a fun day. That really was. I think it was surreal. Like everyone says, what happened that week? And I was like, I was just like, we'd gotten the approval. That was huge. It was like a watershed moment for women. And then 2 days later, I sold it. I won't say who, but there's a very famous newscaster, and she'd had me on to announce the approval of Addie. And and then 2 days later, we said we sold it for $1 billion. And she wrote me a note and she said, "You bitch, you couldn't have come on after you were going to say you sold it for $1 billion." She's like, "Just joking, badass bitch." Like, mazel, I think she said to me,
Mazel.
but it was so great. But this is yet again, like your whole life, I would say, is you're never done. Right? There's always something else coming around the corner. And there are, I think, constant tests in life for how much do you want it? How committed to this are you? Like it's just testing your conviction in things or your commitment to things. And my test was coming in that here I was, theoretically, it's like the perfect ending. And I sell it to this company that's going to make it available to all women. My real ambition from my real mission from the beginning. And then they don't. And then they just put it on a shelf and walk away.
Who bought the company?
It's a company called Valiant. Today they're known as Bausch.
Yeah.
And if you follow Wall Street, they had a pretty spectacular year of a huge swing in the stock price. And
I recall.
They're not, people are like, oh, it's conspiracy. They did it to kill it. They didn't. They just had a business that went through unbelievable turmoil. This was the last thing they had bought. And when their business started to have difficulty, they had to save the existing business, not double down on the new. And so it just got lost. And it was crushing to me, because I would think about the woman who was kind enough to reach out to me and give me the reminder for why I was doing it. And I felt like I was letting her down. I felt like having sold it to them let it down. And women who needed this now couldn't get it. So we had 26 for men. We finally got one on the board for women, and women can't even get the one. And so I felt sorry for myself for a little bit. I mean, I really did. And then
you gave yourself a pity party. You allowed it.
I did. I mean, I had a pretty good pity party. And I felt just so crushed for my team and, for the women, for the doctors who had shown up and educated the FDA. And then I reminded myself that I had of really a few important words, right? 4 important words, not on my watch. Am I going to allow this to happen? Not on my watch. This is a choice. What am I going to do about it? And what I was going to do about it was go back to the company and say, give it back. And, like many of my choices I've made in my life, when I make this choice and the first time I show up in the room and I say it out loud, I'm laughed at. So when I showed up at that company and I said, give it back, I was laughed at. And they had just paid me, are you kidding? $1 billion cash. And I said, you're not doing anything with it. And that is not what you committed to. Women deserve this treatment. And over another almost 2 years of maybe some fighting them behind the scenes, ultimately I got it back. We kept the $1 billion, and I invested today through my Pinkubator and other women disrupting.
That's where we should really drop the mic. But what an unbelievable story. Like, not on my watch. Like, that's a good possibility that might be the episode name. And also, like I've heard you say before, there's no such thing as a happy ending unless you create one.
There isn't. I mean, pun intended, right? I'm in the sex business, and I can absolutely say there's no such thing as the happy ending's up to you. Well, if I say it that way, and I think that's true in life.
It took me a second to understand that one.
Everything in my world is innuendo because I've been in the sex field for a long time.
And I'm trying to help facilitate sex not being so taboo. So good.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, I think it's, if people don't want to, everybody approaches it differently, how comfortable they are talking about it. But at least we should know, like, you should be able to talk about it. You should have a sex life on your own terms. And there are like options for you if things aren't going right, men and women alike now, which is really important to me.
Yeah. This is just an incredible story. There's going to be a movie about this one day, and I would like to be involved in the project. So I'm going to put
I
that
love
intention
it.
out there, straight
Yeah.
up. No, this is compelling stuff. And first of all, like you are a pioneer, straight up.
Oh,
And it's like the only way you lose in life really is if you quit, right? And
yes.
you just won't quit. Like you won't die. Like
Yeah.
like you figure it out, and it's not always the easiest path. In fact, some of the great things are usually the toughest, right?
Yeah, that's
But
right.
you either run through the wall, you run around it, or you climb, whatever the case may be. But you just wouldn't. It wasn't about the money for you.
No.
You wanted to help the customers that were dealing with this stuff. It's just amazing. So now the drug's on the market.
It is.
How's it doing?
Great. It's great. I mean, it was really fun to get it back. I mean, it took us some time when we got it back. We had to build, all the infrastructure to support it, the supply chain. It wasn't stocked in pharmacies. Now it is. Like we did all of that spade work up front, and we've doubled year over year. And
Of course you did.
I can still go to a cocktail party though. I will tell you, I go to a cocktail party, end of the night, I'm in a corner. Every woman at the cocktail party is around me like, wait, what? There's something there's a little pink pill for us. Like, this is how, and all the guys are like, what are you guys talking about? They're like leaning in. But so it's still not there on awareness yet, I think, Craig, but you'll start to see it and hear it. I hope your listeners will start to see and hear more information about Addyi. And listen, it's a prescription drug. It has risks, it has benefits, it requires a consultation.
Just like anything.
With a doctor. Yeah. I don't mean to paint it as like, something that everyone should be on, but for women with this issue, it really is such an important option.
Yeah. And ironically enough, the audience, I would say, is more female than male for CLS. So this is really valuable.
And even for your guys, I think they want to know how to have the conversation. I was with Andy Frisell and Ed Milet with their incredible group, a lot of guys. We had a lot of heart to hearts on, how do you talk about this in a marriage? And, without being, I don't know, accusing your partner of not meeting your needs, but actually having a real conversation and helping women who've never been told. So women have never, as a woman, I can say this, as we go through the medical experience, we're asked a few questions. We're asked, are you sexually active? Do you want birth control? Do you want to be tested for STDs, STIs? No one ever says, are you satisfied? And if we would add that one question, we would open up a conversation that would let people know that there are things happening biologically that could be out of their control, for which they have treatment. It's really like, think about where we were with depression and mental health, not really all that long ago. Sure. When you think about you can think about people you've known in your life where they probably were depressed and everybody was hitting them on the arm and saying, suck it up, life's tough. And you think about that now and you think, oh my God, like we didn't have an appreciation for the brain chemistry issue. Same thing really with what's happening. It's called HSDD for women, what's happening for them. And just the relief that I see for women who know, oh my God, this is something that's happening in my brain. I knew it. And now I can do something about it is really very rewarding.
That's the kicker, right? Like now there's clarity. It's not like what's wrong with me. Now it's just like, oh, there's something out there that could potentially help me with this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like you're just spinning your wheels, which can be obviously very frustrating.
Very. So you feel very isolated in that. In anything, forget even step out of this issue. Like if you think you're the only one dealing with something, you feel pretty isolated in it.
Definitely, for sure. And there's so many hidden messages in this whole story. Like even like for entrepreneurs out there, because obviously the show is mostly entrepreneurs listen, like what kept Cindy going, right? Her why. She wasn't about the billions. It was about, servicing an unmet need, so to speak. And that was her why. And that kept her going when times got tough. And trust me, they got tough. When you're fighting the government, like it doesn't get much tougher than that. And for anyone out there that maybe is frustrated or losing a little bit of momentum or confidence, whatever the case may be, like don't ever forget your why you started in the first place, right?
No doubt. I mean, the story that I tell over and over again about the woman who reached out to me, a complete stranger, right? Who reached out to me, that was a reminder of my why. that is really what happened to me in that moment that gave me the courage, if you will, to fight back, even though by all, everyone else's assessment, the company was done. Can you imagine that I went back to shareholders? I needed more money to be able to go back and fight the government. And they told me no. And I had to go to people to ask them to write checks to say, yeah, but I'm going to fight them. And they're like, wait, what? No one's done this. But you realize, like, you've got to figure out what that driving force is. Yep. What is it that's bigger than you for why you're doing this in life? And when you can identify, I think, that driving force, when you hit rock bottom and those days in which you want to give up, that is your go-to to remind yourself so that you can pick it up and fight another day.
That's it. Bang. It's so true and so important and so valuable for anybody that's doing something for a bigger reason than maybe just money or for something. If you're trying to make an impact or put a dent in the universe and help people, times will get tough. Spoiler alert, it does. There's always adversity, but don't ever forget why you started, and that can keep going in the darkest of days. And I got to ask you, like Valiant, you went back to them and said, you're not using this asset. It's not what you agreed upon. I want it back. How did you end up getting it back and keep all the cash?
Yeah. So I got smarter as I went along, which I hope all of us do in life, right? If you always are willing to learn the lesson. And when I sold Slate, most transactions, or all of your entrepreneurs listening, many of whom have probably sold companies before, you typically get an upfront payment, and then there's some back end. It might be that you participate in royalties. It might be that there's milestone payments. At least it's the best way for you to structure a deal so you can continue to play for some potential upside. And I had done that with my first company, Slate. And I had a royalty on the back end, and it was governed by boilerplate legal language. And that's a best efforts clause. So you're going to see that in a million contracts, right? And I thought, well, wait a minute. What if their best efforts aren't my best efforts? That I'm always going to be sad that they're not working as hard as I think they should be working for me to realize some of this value. The truth is that deal worked out great. But when I went to the table to sell my second company, best efforts clause was in my first document. And I was like, no, we're going to be really specific. This is how much money you need to spend on a drug of this magnitude for marketing. This is how many salespeople you need to have. This is the educational efforts. And it wasn't like I was asking for something like unrealistic, but I was asking for something specific, and they agreed to it contractually. And when I went back to the table and they were like, no, we paid you for it, I said, yes, but you're not doing these things that we agreed to contractually. That was my leverage. And I think that's just a lesson to all of the entrepreneurs out there writing contracts. Specificity is always really helpful to you in the end.
Yeah, 100%. What an unbelievable lesson. And again, I just have to acknowledge you. Kudos to you for getting it back and seeing through the vision. At the end of the day, you had a mission that was really, really, really big. And through all the ups and downs and through all the obstacles and the challenges, you created your own happy ending. And obviously, like you even said, and this podcast will hopefully help facilitate awareness and so forth. But a lot of the world isn't even aware yet. So you're going to continue to help so many more women and so forth. And even the guys that hear the conversation. Now you have a little bit of knowledge to potentially help your partner who might not even known that this option existed.
That's right. That's right. It's just changing. Now the new mission is really changing this conversation forever.
That's it. I got to ask you, when you were building and you were coming up, because I'm a fan, I know this, but I want the audience to hear this. You didn't have much of any social life when you were really building and grinding, because that's sometimes what it takes. Sacrifice when you're investing in yourself. Talk about that for a minute and let the audience know, like, if you really want to do something really special, then it's bigger than just making some money. To really make an impact, sacrifices and investing is a part of it.
Listen, I think it's such an unrealistic narrative that you can have it all. You're going to give something up, right? There's sacrifice in anything. So you are picking and choosing. And in all honesty, for all of those years that I was head down, building those businesses, many sleepless nights, brutal hours, I had no social life. And that's what I gave up. So, for years of my life, I was really kind of a lone ranger. I had a wonderful team, thank God. So I had awesome, people surrounding me. I have a great family, unbelievable big brothers. But when I started dating again after I sold the company, which was pretty funny, there's lots of funny stories in that in general, because I'm a little bit weird when you have the conversation like, "Whoa, hey, what do you do?" "Oh, female Viagra," right? Like people are like, "Wait, what? What a minute? Wait, you sold your company for what?" So it was an interesting transition.
I can only imagine those conversations.
Oh my God. But I'm engaged now, years later. And when Justin first would ask me out, he would ask me to these restaurants and he would say, "Hey, have you ever been here?" I'd be like, "No." He'd ask me the next one, "Hey, like, let's go out again. You want to go to this restaurant? Ever been there?" "No." And I think by like the fifth date, he's like, "She's actually not been to a single restaurant in the town we live in." And he said, "Well, welcome to your town 10 years later." And for 10 years, like I actually hadn't been to any of those places because I was probably ordering, Chinese takeout to my desk.
Yeah. I love it because I'm working very hard right now as I'm building and so forth. To be honest with you, it's not really work to me because I genuinely love it. Like this is work to me. This conversation is awesome.
Yeah.
But straight up, like for the audience listening, if you want to do something really special, and if you don't, that's okay too. But if you do want to subscribe to really making an impact, there's sacrifice involved, but it's going to pay off.
It's so fun. Yeah, I think you choose, right? And to your point, like it was a choice. I wasn't, I was electing to do that. I have absolute choice in how I want to live my life. And actually, I think recognizing that gets me to define work-life balance on my own terms, right? Because it's my choice. I have a friend and he taught me this expression. He would say, "My work is my hobby, my hobby's my work." And I loved that expression because it was like exactly what you said, like, I love what I do.
Yep.
I love what I do. People say all the time, "You got a check for $1 billion. What did you do the next day?" And then they're disappointed when I say, "I woke up and I went to work." Because that's what I do.
I get it.
That's what I do. That's what I like to do. That's my happy place is, that energy I get from going in and building things and disrupting things. That's my joy. So what else would I do? That's the only thing I know how to do.
This is awesome because you know what? You just helped me articulate something in my brain because like people that are very close to me, I don't want to say necessarily get frustrated, but they don't understand how I'm working so much. And I always think to me, this isn't work, but you just took it a step further. Like, this is what I enjoy. Like, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing right now than this.
Right.
And most people don't understand that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it shapes a lot of even relationships. Justin and I worked together. We didn't work together, obviously, when we first met. I tease that to love me is to work with me. But, I certainly found that energy that he also loves what he does. He loves, we do different things, but they're complementary. And it's that energy, I think, so that's the right thing in a partner too, for sure.
Yeah. 2 final quick questions to land the plane with. Is it true that you love to give people nicknames?
I do. I do. That is like a really weird quality. And actually,
weird is the best. First of all, weird is the best.
The weird is the best. That's one of my choices is choose to be quirky, which I think is a different way to say weird, which is just own exactly who you are. Show up authentically as you. I find that companies that give permission for people to just be their strange old selves are the highest performing companies, as opposed to everybody who's beating you into sameness. Like, we do it this way. It's just this. That's so boring, that world. And my quirk really from when I was a little girl is I've always nicknamed everyone. So I have unbelievable nicknames. And when you come into the company, we just know each other by nicknames. So people will think we're speaking like a different language. Like, wait, who's Nurse Ratchet? Who's Nurse Ratchet? Who's Snooks? Who's something? Like, it's all these nicknames. But I will say, a lot of my company are salespeople. who don't get to be in the office with us all the time. And really, they're only with us often twice a year, like when the whole company is together. And it's so fun to see how they're already connected to one another through the story of the nickname, because the nicknames are always something that is, so unique about that person, that it's a story I'd want to tell when they walked in the room.
Yeah, it's funny. There's so much synergy here. It really is so special. I used to always give people nicknames too when I was growing up and so forth. And a lot of them stick until this day. They're contagious. And it's just good. Like, look, the weirder we are, the better. And once I really started owning that and like be like the most authentic Craig that I could possibly be, ironically enough, that's when I started making the biggest impact.
It's totally true. I say to people all the time, if you're at a place where you can't be yourself, quit. I know that they're like, oh God, that's easier said than done. I get it. But what I'm saying is you will never reach your maximum potential in an environment that is suffocating parts of what is true to you.
Beautifully said. Yeah. I once had Suzanne Summers on the podcast and we talked a lot about the it factor.
Yeah.
I know you're big on that as well. The it factor is such an interesting topic. What does it mean for someone to have the it factor?
To me, I will say it's Seth Godin, purple cow. And that is what I would say the it factor is. And I used to really sign off in Slate Moo to my team because I imagined the story, if you haven't read it, I mean, it's really a book about marketing, but it's such a good book for anybody who hasn't read it. It's old school. But the concept is like, what if you went on the vacation of a lifetime, right? You landed in the French countryside tomorrow, you're driving along and you're looking at the countryside. Oh, honey, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Look at that. And actually, in a very short amount of time, you wouldn't even see it anymore. It would just be sort of taken for granted. And it would take a purple cow in the field for you to pay attention. And it's really the notion of who stands out in a sea of sameness. And I think, Craig, honestly, the people who stand out in a sea of sameness are just the people who are showing up as their authentic self. Because so many people are playing a part. They walk in, for example, to an interview and they think this is the way I'm supposed to be. This is the way I'm supposed to dress. This is the answer I'm supposed to give. And the people who don't have that, who just give the answer, the truthful them all out on the table, are the ones that I have hired through all the years.
There's such an abundance of nuggets that you're dropping today. This is the type of episode that's going to get re-listened to numerous times by everyone. Thank you so much. I love it. What does the color pink mean to you?
Power. It's not pretty in pink. It's power in pink. Make no mistake. Femininity is a real strength in the boardroom.
Yeah. I love it. It's funny because I ran the New York City Marathon about a month ago after surgery and all that. And I had these pink marathon shoes. They're very noticeable. And then my mom had an accident about a month ago. She's very clumsy. She tripped over a hose and she shattered her ankle. And when it came to getting a cast, she's like, you inspired me, meaning her son, to run the marathon after a tumor in my foot and surgery. So she got a hot pink cast. I got to send you a picture of it.
Love it. Oh, I want to see it.
Actually, I just posted the other day. You can see it, but she's on fire with the pink cast. And of course, she's owning that. It's powerful. And I couldn't help but think of you.
So great. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you for having me. I've had so much fun.
Yeah, this was just different. It was so special. What's the best way for the audience to support you? Like, what are some of the cool and exciting things you have going on right now? And what's the deal with the Pinkubator?
Yeah. So listen, I hope you'll follow me at Cindy Pink CEO across all social, mostly Instagram. And in the Pinkubator, if you have an idea, somebody who's got a disruptive first, by women, for women, please send them my way. You can find us at thepinksceiling.com, pinkubator.com. We'd love to hear those ideas. We really do mostly health and wellness. So I'll just put it out there in the beginning. I like the disruptive firsts that are changing women's health.
Yeah, I love it. For the audience listening, if you absolutely love the episode, share it, tag Cindy and I, we'll repost it and so forth. Cindy, how can I personally support you?
Well, you already have by introducing me to your audience. I thank you so much. Congratulations. You've had a rocket ship ride. I love watching what you're up to, and I'm so delighted to meet your followers. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And I just want to let you know you're the definition of resilience, grit, heart, curiosity, and entrepreneurship. You're making the world a better place by lending others to be bold, curious, and courageous. You disrupted an entire industry and have impacted the lives of billions. Your mindset is absolutely bulletproof, and your business sense and leadership is on a whole other level. You're a role model and beacon of hope for anyone coming up today with big goals and aspirations. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and creating that multiplier effect. So much love and respect to you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless nuggets today, Cindy.
Thank you. Let's paint it pink.
Let's do it. This was too much fun.
Thank you. That's so fun. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Yay.
You're awesome.
Good. Yay. That was good.
Yeah.